I'm 28F and work as a marketing coordinator at a mid-sized tech company. I've been there for 4 years and have worked my way up from an entry-level position. My direct supervisor, Jennifer, is 45F and has been with the company for about 2 years. She came in at a senior level and was immediately put in charge of our marketing team. When Jennifer was hired, she seemed great. She had an impressive resume with a master's degree from a prestigious university and claimed to have 12 years of experience at major corporations. Everyone was excited to have someone with her background leading the team. However, pretty quickly, I started noticing some issues. Jennifer would constantly take credit for ideas that other team members came up with. She'd sit in on our brainstorming meetings, then present our concepts to upper management as her own innovations. When anyone tried to speak up about it, she'd shut them down or find ways to exclude them from future meetings. She also had this habit of giving impossible deadlines and then blaming the team when we couldn't meet them. If a project went well, she'd take all the credit. If something went wrong, she'd throw whoever worked on it under the bus. Despite all this, Jennifer was really good at managing up. She'd schmooze with the executives and always had the perfect thing to say in meetings. The higher-ups loved her and saw her as this brilliant addition to the company. About 6 months ago, our department had announced that they were creating a new position, Senior Marketing Manager, that would basically be Jennifer's equal, but focused on digital strategy. It was a significant promotion with a 40% salary increase and would come with managing a small team. I was really interested in the position. I'd been handling most of our digital campaigns anyway, and I consistently exceeded my targets. I'd also completed several professional certifications on my own time and had started taking evening classes toward my MBA. When I told Jennifer I planned to apply, she seemed supportive. She said she thought I'd be great for the role and offered to help me prepare my presentation for the interview process. What I didn't know at the time was that Jennifer had also decided to apply for the position herself. The application process was pretty extensive. We had to submit a detailed portfolio of our work, write a strategic plan for the department's digital future, and give a 30-minute presentation to the executive team. There were 3 internal candidates total, myself, Jennifer, and someone from our sister company's marketing team. I spent weeks working on my presentation. I put together a comprehensive analysis of our current digital performance, identified areas for improvement, and created a detailed roadmap for the next 2 years. I was really proud of what I'd put together. Jennifer offered several times to review my presentation and give feedback. I was grateful for the help, so I sent her my slides and notes about a week before the presentation date. 2 days before my presentation, Jennifer called me into her office. She said she'd reviewed my work and had some concerns. She pointed out several areas where she thought my analysis was weak and suggested I might want to reconsider applying for the position. I was confused because when we discussed it earlier, she'd been encouraging. But she seemed genuinely concerned, so I asked her to be specific about what needed improvement. She said my financial projections seemed unrealistic and that some of my strategic recommendations showed I didn't understand the company's broader goals. She suggested that maybe I should wait another year or 2 before applying for a management role. I was disappointed, but decided to take her feedback seriously. I spent the next 2 days completely reworking my presentation, trying to address the issues she'd raised. I saved the updated version to our shared marketing server, so I could access it from the conference room computer. The morning of my presentation, I felt confident about the changes I'd made. I got to the conference room early to set up and pulled my presentation from the shared server. When the executives arrived, I started my presentation. But within the first few slides, I realized something was wrong. The financial projections I was showing were completely different from what I'd prepared. The numbers were way off, and some of the charts didn't even make sense. I tried to continue, but it became obvious that my presentation had been tampered with. Several of my key slides had been altered or replaced with incomplete data. My strategic recommendations had been changed to things that contradicted our company's stated objectives. The presentation was a disaster. The executives kept asking me to explain projections that I hadn't created and questioning strategies that I'd never proposed. I tried to explain that my presentation had been changed, but it just made me look unprepared and disorganized. After I finished, the department head thanked me politely, but I could tell they were not impressed. I left the conference room feeling humiliated and completely confused about what had happened. I went back to my desk and immediately checked my laptop. All of my original files were there, unchanged. But somehow the version on the server had been completely corrupted. I called our IT department and asked them to check when the file had last been modified. They told me it had been changed at 6:47 a.m. that morning from Jennifer's login credentials, about an hour before I'd arrived at the office. I was absolutely furious. Jennifer had deliberately sabotaged my presentation to make me look incompetent, but I didn't know what to do about it. I couldn't prove that she'd done it intentionally, and accusing her of sabotage would just make me look like I was making excuses for a bad presentation. I decided to keep quiet about it and see what happened with the hiring process. Jennifer gave her presentation 2 days later. I wasn't allowed to attend, but I heard from someone in HR that it went really well. A week after that, the department had announced that Jennifer had been promoted to the senior marketing manager position. I was devastated. Not only had Jennifer sabotaged my opportunity, but she'd used my failure to advance her own career while pretending to be my mentor and supporter. The third candidate from our sister company told me later that she'd withdrawn her application after hearing how badly my presentation had gone. She said she figured if someone with my experience and knowledge of the company couldn't impress the executives, she didn't have a chance. For the next few weeks, I tried to act professional and move on, but Jennifer was insufferable in her new role. She'd make comments about how important it was to be ready for leadership positions and how some people rushed into things before they were prepared. She also started treating me differently. She'd exclude me from important meetings and give me busy work instead of meaningful projects. It was clear that she saw me as a threat and wanted to keep me from having another opportunity to advance. I started looking for other jobs, but the market was tough and I couldn't afford to quit without something lined up. Then something interesting happened. Since Jennifer had gotten promoted, they needed someone to handle some of her old responsibilities. They hired a new marketing coordinator named Alex to take on some of the workload. Alex was fresh out of college and was really eager to learn. During Alex's second week, he was working on updating our team bios for the company website. He asked me for help finding Jennifer's educational background and previous work experience for her bio. I pulled up Jennifer's resume from when she was hired and started reading through it with Alex. As we went through her background, Alex made a comment that stopped me cold. He said, "Oh, interesting. Jennifer went to the same graduate school as my sister. What year did she graduate?" I checked the resume. It said Jennifer had gotten her master's degree in 2008. Alex called his sister right then to ask about Jennifer. His sister had been in the graduate program from 2007 to 2009 and said the name didn't sound familiar, but she wasn't sure she'd know everyone in the program. Alex thought maybe Jennifer had gotten married and changed her name, so he described her. His sister said she might remember someone like that but couldn't be certain. That got me curious, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions based on one person's memory. Over the next few days, I started doing some research into Jennifer's background. I looked up the university she claimed to have attended and searched their online alumni directory. No record of anyone with Jennifer's name graduating from their MBA program in 2008 or any of the surrounding years. I checked LinkedIn and found several people who claimed to have worked at the companies Jennifer listed on her resume during the same time periods. I reached out to a few of them, claiming I was doing reference checks for a potential hire. The first company Jennifer claimed to have worked at, a marketing firm where she said she'd been a senior manager for 3 years, had no record of her. I spoke to someone in their HR department who said they'd checked their employee database going back 15 years and found nothing. The second company was trickier. It was a large corporation, so I contacted someone who worked in the marketing department during the time Jennifer claimed to be there. They said they'd never heard of her, but acknowledged that the company was big enough that they might not have known everyone. But when I asked about the specific role Jennifer claimed to have had, leading a major product launch campaign, they said they definitely would have known about that. The marketing department wasn't that large, and anyone leading a major campaign would have been well known within the team. The third company on Jennifer's resume was where things got interesting. I found someone who had worked there during Jennifer's claimed employment period, and they confirmed that Jennifer had worked there. However, they said she'd been there for only about 8 months as a junior marketing assistant, not the 2 years as a marketing manager that she'd claimed. I spent 2 weeks carefully verifying every piece of Jennifer's background. Her undergraduate degree was real. I confirmed that with the school's registrar. But her master's degree appeared to be completely fake. And her work experience was either fabricated or significantly exaggerated. According to her resume, Jennifer claimed 12 years of progressive marketing experience. But based on what I could verify, she'd really only worked in marketing for about 3 years total, and most of that was in junior positions. I knew I had to report this to HR, but I also knew it would look like revenge for not getting the promotion. I decided to document everything carefully and present it as a concern about company security rather than a personal grievance. I put together a detailed report with screenshots of my research, copies of the documentation I'd found, and a timeline of inconsistencies in Jennifer's background. I submitted it to HR and requested a meeting to discuss my findings. HR took it seriously immediately. They said they'd investigate and asked me not to discuss the matter with anyone else in the company. The investigation took about a week. I later found out that they'd hired a professional background check company to verify Jennifer's credentials and work history. Everything I'd found was confirmed. Jennifer's master's degree was completely fabricated. The university had no record of her ever being enrolled. Her work experience had been dramatically exaggerated, with job titles inflated and employment periods extended. HR called Jennifer in for a meeting on a Friday afternoon. I don't know exactly what was said, but Jennifer cleaned out her desk that same day. The company announced that she'd decided to pursue other opportunities and would be leaving immediately. On Monday morning, our department head called a team meeting. He announced that the senior marketing manager position was being reopened and that they'd be accepting applications from qualified internal candidates. He also made a point of saying that they'd be conducting more thorough background checks for all future management positions. I reapplied for the position and was offered the job 2 weeks later. Update: 3 weeks later, Jennifer found out that I was the one who reported her fake credentials to HR. I'm not sure how. HR said they'd keep my involvement confidential, but Jennifer called me last Tuesday night, absolutely furious. She accused me of ruining her career out of spite and said I was a vindictive person who couldn't handle losing. She said she was going to make sure everyone in the industry knew what kind of person I really was. I told her that I'd simply reported factual information to HR and that if her career was ruined, it was because she'd built it on lies. She hung up on me. 2 days later, I started getting friend requests on social media from people I didn't know. When I checked their profiles, they all seemed to be connected to Jennifer somehow. I declined the requests and made my profiles private. Then Jennifer started posting on LinkedIn about how important it was to support women in the workplace and not tear each other down. She didn't mention me by name, but she made several posts about how some people use dirty tactics to get ahead and how the corporate world could be really toxic. Several people who knew both of us commented on her posts, asking what had happened. Jennifer would respond with vague comments about being betrayed by someone she trusted and how she was learning who her real friends were. I didn't respond to any of it. I figured it would blow over once Jennifer found a new job. But then last week, Jennifer posted a long message claiming that she'd been the victim of a malicious campaign by a coworker who was jealous of her success. She said this person had fabricated evidence to get her fired and that she was considering legal action. She still didn't mention me by name, but she included enough details that anyone who knew about the situation could figure out she was talking about me. That's when some of our mutual professional contacts started reaching out to me asking what had happened. I gave them the basic facts, that Jennifer had been let go after a background check revealed discrepancies in her credentials. Most people were shocked. Jennifer had been pretty well connected in our local marketing community, and a lot of people had respected her. But then something unexpected happened. After word got out about Jennifer's fake credentials, 3 other people contacted me privately. They said they'd worked with Jennifer at previous companies and had suspected something was off about her background, but had never said anything. One person said Jennifer had claimed to have a degree from a different university when she worked at their company. Another said Jennifer had told completely different stories about her work experience, depending on who she was talking to. It became clear that this wasn't the first time Jennifer had lied about her qualifications. Update: 6 weeks later. Jennifer's threats about legal action turned out to be more than just angry talk. Last Monday, I received a certified letter from an attorney claiming to represent her. The letter accused me of intentional interference with business relations and defamation of character. It claimed that I had maliciously spread false information about Jennifer's background with the intent to damage her career. The letter demanded that I stop making defamatory statements about Jennifer and pay her $50,000 in damages for lost income and emotional distress. It said that if I didn't respond within 10 days, they would file a lawsuit. I was pretty freaked out. Even though I knew I hadn't done anything wrong, the idea of being sued was terrifying. I took the letter to an employment attorney my friend recommended. The attorney read through everything and said the threats were completely baseless. She explained that reporting factual information to HR about an employee's false credentials isn't defamation. It's actually something companies encourage to prevent fraud. She said Jennifer would have to prove that I'd made false statements about her, which would be impossible since everything I'd reported was true. The attorney said it sounded like Jennifer was just trying to intimidate me and that most lawyers wouldn't actually file such a weak case. She offered to write a response letter for a few $100s, so I had her do that. The response basically said that I had reported truthful information to my employer as part of their normal business processes and that I hadn't defamed Jennifer in any way. I also found out from Alex that Jennifer had been telling people she was fired because of a personality conflict with me and that the credentials issue was just an excuse HR used to get rid of her. But the truth was starting to catch up with her. Several companies in our area had started asking more detailed questions about her background when she applied for jobs. Word had gotten around the professional community that there were questions about her qualifications. Update: 2 months later. Jennifer's attorney never followed up on their threats, which confirmed what my lawyer had said about the case being weak. But Jennifer's job search wasn't going well. I heard through mutual connections that she'd been turned down for several positions after companies did their own background checks. The marketing community in our city isn't huge, and word had definitely gotten around about what had happened. It wasn't that people were gossiping maliciously, it's just that when someone gets fired for falsifying credentials, other employers tend to take notice. Jennifer eventually found a job at a small startup about an hour away. From what I heard, it was a significant step down in terms of responsibility and pay compared to what she'd been making. Meanwhile, I was settling into my new role as senior marketing manager. The job was everything I'd hoped it would be. I was managing a team of 3 people and had the autonomy to implement the digital strategy I'd originally proposed. The executives were happy with the results I was delivering, and I felt like I was finally being recognized for my actual capabilities rather than being held back by Jennifer's manipulation. A few people at work made comments about how much better the team dynamic was without Jennifer. They said the atmosphere was more collaborative and that people felt more comfortable sharing ideas. I realized that Jennifer's behavior had been affecting the entire team, not just me. People had been walking on eggshells around her because they never knew when she might take credit for their work or blame them for something that went wrong. Update: 4 months later. I thought the whole situation with Jennifer was behind me, but last month I got contacted by an investigator from our company's insurance carrier. Apparently, Jennifer had filed a claim with her employment practices liability insurance, claiming that she'd been wrongfully terminated. She was seeking coverage for her legal expenses and lost wages. The insurance investigator wanted to interview me about what had happened. I told them the whole story and provided copies of all the documentation I'd submitted to HR. The investigator said they'd been hired to determine whether the company had legitimate grounds for terminating Jennifer. Based on what they'd found, it was clear that Jennifer had been fired for cause and that her insurance claim would likely be denied. They also mentioned that Jennifer's attorney had apparently advised her not to pursue the lawsuit against me because there wasn't enough evidence to support her claims. Around the same time, I heard that Jennifer had left the startup job she'd gotten and moved to a different state. Someone said she was working in a completely different field now, doing real estate or something similar. I felt a little sad about how everything had turned out. I'd never wanted to destroy Jennifer's career. I just wanted to stop her from continuing to lie and manipulate people. But I also felt vindicated. Jennifer had spent 2 years taking credit for other people's work and holding back team members who deserved recognition. The fact that her behavior had finally caught up with her seemed like justice. Final update: 6 months later. The insurance investigation concluded that Jennifer's termination was completely justified and her claim for wrongful termination was denied. The investigator told me that they'd uncovered even more discrepancies in Jennifer's background that HR hadn't found initially. Our company also decided to implement new policies for background checks and credential verification. All management positions now require third-party verification of educational and employment history. I've been in my role for 6 months now and recently got my first performance review as a manager. My boss said I was exceeding expectations and that the digital marketing improvements I'd implemented had resulted in a 35% increase in qualified leads. More importantly, my team seems happy and engaged. We have weekly brainstorming sessions where everyone contributes ideas, and I make sure to give credit where it's due when presenting to upper management. 2 of my team members have gotten promoted to senior roles in other departments, which my boss said was a good sign that I was developing talent effectively. I also finished my MBA last month. Between the promotion and my new degree, I feel like I'm finally on the career track I'd been working toward before Jennifer derailed things. I haven't heard anything about Jennifer since she moved away. Part of me wonders if she learned anything from what happened, or if she's just found new ways to manipulate people in whatever field she's working in now. I hope she's found a way to succeed honestly, but based on everything I experienced, I'm not optimistic that she's changed her fundamental approach to getting ahead. Looking at the whole situation now, I'm glad I reported Jennifer's fake credentials even though it led to months of drama and stress. Companies have a right to know if they're hiring people based on false information, and employees have a right to work for managers who earn their positions legitimately. Jennifer chose to build her career on lies and manipulation. When that foundation finally collapsed, the consequences were entirely of her own making. I learned a lot about standing up for myself and not letting people take advantage of me professionally. It was a hard lesson, but it made me a better manager and colleague. The whole experience also taught me the importance of verifying information before making important decisions. If our company had done proper background checks when Jennifer was hired, none of this would have happened in the first place. I still work at the same company and love my job. My team is performing well, I have a great relationship with upper management, and I feel like I'm finally being recognized for my actual contributions rather than being overshadowed by someone who is taking credit for everyone else's work. Sometimes people ask me if I regret reporting Jennifer, or if I think I should have handled it differently. The answer is no. Jennifer made her choices, and I made mine. She chose to lie and cheat her way into a position she wasn't qualified for. I chose to tell the truth when I discovered what she'd done. I'm proud of how I handled the situation, and I'd do the same thing again if I found myself in similar circumstances. Integrity matters, and companies and employees deserve better than what Jennifer was offering.